So
What are we thinking?
We can cut out the side.
got my new fob.
Yeah, we'll cut out the
Got my fob this morning, which is why I was late to the lecture.
And how much that cost you?
Cost me 20 quid.
20
For
British
fucking
pounds. Pounds.
So I really want to do a
Peter
podcast.
Piper.
To get into my own home. What happens if I didn't have 20 quid? Good morning, good people, and welcome to the Philosophy Podcast. I'm your host, Will, and as always, we have...
Matthew, hello.
Tom.
Come on, a bit more energy, a bit more fucking oomph. We've just started, man. You don't want to start on a low. Where you go from there?
It's the topics, man.
And
It's the
Tom.
topics.
Something I
All
don't
about the
know already.
topics.
I
Yeah.
don't want to talk about
Shall we go to the first one then?
life.
Okay, so, I mean, bit of preamble. Been a bit late since the last one for a couple of reasons. For example, Tom didn't book a room when he should have, and we weren't able to get one.
I think it's a poor excuse.
Also,
That
we
is a poor
fancy it,
excuse. That's your excuse. We would have recorded it by now, otherwise.
But you should have been out on Wednesday, mate. That's when I released them.
However, we're all friends here, and we're not holding anything against you, Tom. Nothing at all.
Except that's your first strike, mate.
You're quite capable of booking a room.
Yeah, true. So we've got a couple of topics again lined up. Again, we're running towards the end of our life and death course, so we're pulling a few things from there and a few things, do you say, just that we're interested personally in talking about?
Yeah, we're going to try our best. We're running out of stuff to say.
You don't want to talk about it, do you, mate?
I do.
Podcast number 3, and we're out of philosophy.
Yeah, it's difficult because you want to be quite well explored on what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And when we're not very well explored, I think it might dampen the content.
I don't know, there's a bit of...
But we'll give it a go.
Yeah, there's a nice quality to it, like us exploring our ideas instead of just regurgitating things
Yeah.
we've read.
It's also very approachable.
Yeah, there's a value in that.
Yeah, all the idiots that listen can relate then as well.
I mean, all the intellectuals that listen.
Yeah, that's the thing when I listen to Jordan Peterson, I've just got no idea what he's talking about, like the references they make.
You've got to really concentrate.
Well, usually they're making references to all the shows and all the information.
Ah.
So you have to be like,
Yeah,
I
religious
like
following.
those kind of references.
So that's a highlight to our listeners. You need to listen to every single one of these podcasts or you won't understand what's happening. I promise you, you don't want to miss anything.
To be fair, I don't think we understand what's happening.
No. So what are we thinking? Which one are we going to start off with, lads?
Will, what's the meaning of life?
Well, I have an extremely strong view on what the meaning of life is, and that is the pursuit of happiness.
The pursuit of happiness.
And I think it's literally that simple. People overcomplicate it way too much. When I look at everything that we strive to be, for instance, self-improvement. Self-improvement, lots of people find very, very important in life. I'd argue, well, why are you improving yourself? Because you want to be happier. Or you want to make other people happy. Why do you want to make other people happy? Because it makes you happier. Everything we do includes the word want. If you don't do something because you don't want to, if you do something but you don't want to, you end up not doing it in the first place. Everything we do because we want. It may be the lesser of two evils in the situation, but we do it because we want to. Everything we do in the pursuit of happiness.
And and Tom, you don't agree with that, do you? You've got a slightly different theory about it.
I don't know.
Or has he just convinced you in that that 2 minutes?
I really hate this question because the pursuit of happiness is it's a good way to live your life.
Yeah.
And
It's the only way.
It's very relatable as well because it can intertwine into many things. I don't think we can answer the question of what the pursuit of life is.
The purpose.
Meaning of life. I think we have to discover other things first. For me, at the moment, the meaning of life is to progress. The meaning of life is stuff like discovery, and it is also fulfilling our desires, which you can relate into happiness,
As well as improvement.
Yeah,
What's the point of improving, mate?
You could also relate like progress into happiness, but I think we need to figure out. For me, I think there is a deeper meaning to life, and before we can figure out that, we need to figure out other things like where our consciousness comes from, and we really need to figure out where we lie in the universe or in relation to things in the universe. And then when we figure that out, then we can figure out what the actual meaning of life is. I think the meaning of life could change depending on what it is we know. I think to have a meaning of life to be like just happiness, for me, feels very primal, and I like to think of humans as like sort of this above primal level where we can aspire to greater things. But I do like happiness.
I don't see why it should be that complicated.
It's a complicated question, I think.
Humans are animals. Like, we have all these distinctions, and even though I disagree with him, I like Diogenes specifically because he believes humans are animals, We pride ourselves too much. We focus on not being animals too much. When we are, we're just an outcome of the world. You know, we're not even finished yet. What's the point of being on this, this pillar above all the other animals? Why can't it just be happiness?
Do you not think that simply accumulating as much happiness as possible just feels a little bit, again, like you were saying, Tom, first unfulfilling and secondary, just a little bit arbitrary? Like, just to experience as much happiness as possible in your life, it seems like to dedicate your entire existence to this hedonistic view that your only purpose is to be a host for all this pleasure. Doesn't that just seem a little bit unfulfilling? And it doesn't really feel like it would give anybody any sort of purpose. Just, just feel good. Like that's all there is to it. Do you not think there can be any more depth in the reason we're here, or any sort of other higher purposes?
I'm definitely a fan of balance. So I think you need to balance the good with the bad. Because if you don't have the bad, then the good becomes less valuable. To the point where it isn't good anymore, it's just neutral. It's nothing,
Yeah.
An easy example is religious example. In order for there to be a God, you need a demon, you need a devil.
Yeah.
You need a badness, so you can value the good more. And, a side point, if God does exist and he made the devil, he's kind of a prick for doing that.
Yeah, a little bit.
He basically makes you worship him. Or her.
Them.
Or them. Non-binary folk. But no, I believe balance is definitely important.
Yeah.
So that's why I specifically talk about the pursuit of happiness. Because the pursuit of happiness may not lead to a happy outcome.
Yeah.
And it almost always involves both happiness and unhappiness in the process to the outcome. But as long as you have that intention to receive happiness by the end of it, I think is very important. The problem I'm going to point out in my own argument here is...
We don't even need to be it, Tom.
Thankfully.
And I've sort of done this in a very sort of Zeno kind of way.
Oh,
you cannot argue against it.
We'll see.
Because every process, every act that we do, like I said, we do because we want.
Yeah.
There's a reason. For instance, I had a friend, I explained to her, meaning of life is pursuit of happiness. And she came up with, well, what happens, I think she may have had some emotional attachment to this, but she said, well, what happens if you have to look after an elderly family member?
Yeah.
You aren't happy, but you have to help them. And I goes, well, why are you helping them? You're helping them for one reason. Because one of two reasons. Because you either want to help them,
Yeah.
or you don't want to handle the repercussions of not helping them. Therefore, you want to help them.
Yeah.
Everything we do revolves around the word want.
Yeah.
Everything we make a conscious decision on, anything that includes autonomy, we include the word want.
Yeah. Well, in that kind of situation, I would factor in moral contentment as a kind of happiness. So it's almost like a higher form or a slightly removed form of happiness or pleasure, in that you could dedicate your entire life to working in a pit to farm diamonds to give to little poor Ethiopian children to raise them out of poverty or something like that. You're not necessarily experiencing immediate pleasure from any of that, but in the long run you're aspiring to a sense of higher contentment.
Yeah, exactly.
But I know already that from previous discussions that you would not get into the think tank. Or is that what's the actual name of that?
The experience machine.
The experience machine, which is
do you want to explain it?
yeah, it's a thought experiment someone created for reasons I can't actually remember. But it's basically a machine you can plug into that allows you to experience your perfect life, where everything goes as you would want it to. However, you don't know you're in the machine, and I know that you are against the idea of that. But that seems to conflict with your idea that if your primary and ultimate goal in life was to achieve pleasure or even moral satisfaction, like I spoke about earlier, or any other kind of happiness, why do you disagree that that is not the course of action you should take? You shouldn't get in that thought machine, experience machine.
The only way I think that machine would actually be the answer is if human beings were perfect. The problem is human beings want strife in our lives. Our brains are programmed in such a way we need some sort of resilience, whether or not it's gathering food, or finding a humble abode, or even communicating with each other. We need conflict. We need not necessarily aggression, but complications. So I would argue that initially anyone in those experience machines would start out with a very blissful life. But after a very short amount of time, similar actually to a TV show that we watched about heaven.
Oh, The Good Place.
After a certain amount of time, there will be conflicts and there will be issues evolving, specifically because people want it.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely agree with that, but hell, let's just program that into the experience machine. You have all the strife to make the happiness seem even more valuable. Everything is at that perfect end calculation. You have just enough strife, but you have just enough nice stuff as well to make all of it worth it. Would you then get into the machine?
Well, yeah, that's my compromise. My compromise is, well, if it's the Matrix, so it's basically just reality as we know it as it is right now, then I go, yeah, what the hell? If you have no option but to either stay out or stay in, no in-betweens, then I do not see a difference between staying in and out. If you're in for the rest of your life or the whole of your life, this is reality. And if it involves good and bad, then what's the difference?
See, that's where part of my problem lies insofar as if you're in an experience machine, there is not really any room to progress, I don't think. Because as far as I know, the experience machine can only work on everything that we know so far. So for us to actually develop and progress, you can progress in so much as what's plugged into the machine.
You mean as a species?
Yeah. And anything outside of the machine, so anything like really exploratory, we can't advance outside of the machine. And this is where I think that we need to answer other questions first before we can really sort of get down to the meaning of life. Because I don't like a solution being to plug into the experience machine. And it is like, although the pursuit of happiness is a very good answer to the question, if it can lead us to this cause, then it seems like there's a problem with it. I don't know what I was going to say anymore.
Would you not argue that in order for, I'm just going to call it the Matrix, in order for the Matrix to be sort of compatible with human beings, so I do believe that definitely one aspect of happiness is improvement, whether it be through the individual, community, technology or science. Human beings always have to go forwards. Would you not assume that the aliens or the robots or whatever controlling the machine would think that through as well? Whether or not it's us who think that through, would we not incorporate these developments into it? Because they would cause conflict as well as happiness.
Yeah, but you'd never be able to develop past the point of what they program into the machine. So although you may think it's impossible for us to, for example, overtake the aliens, you'd only be able to develop up to the point of what they can program. You can never develop any further. So there could be a point that we can increase our happiness or increase our ability to gain more happiness, and we're not going to be able to get to this point without our sort of progress and development.
Yeah, I don't think you don't want to get too caught up on trying to work around the experiment. I think to make the experiment as effective as possible, you have to sort of imagine away scenarios like that. It's not impossible to imagine a machine that does have that boundless possibility. Just to say that the machine won't be able to work in this I don't think is a satisfactory answer to the experiment. It's like that girl in lecture who was like, "I'll just put the dog on my lap," like in the thought experiment. There was a moral dilemma in Life and Death where we were trying to. The point of the thought experiment was to illustrate how we're all humanist and we all have an innate species bias to other human beings. And the way the experiment tried to illustrate this was to say you're on a life raft and there's one more space for a guy or a dog. And she was like, "We'll get the guy on, I'll just have the dog on my lap."
Fucking hell.
You got to with thought experiments like this.
You've missed the point completely.
Yeah, exactly. It's worth considering in all sort of any situation where a thought experiment is involved. Is you need to try and find the purpose of the experiment and then try and look at it charitably. So finding little logical problems with the big picture doesn't tackle the initial problem at all.
Semantics.
So again, it's difficult to say whether either of you are right because...
Oh no, I'm right.
It's easy for you to say. Anyone else, mate. Because it almost seems like human existence, being the fluke that it is almost completely devoid of any actual purpose. Instead, purpose to me seems to be I don't know if I want to call it a linguistic construction or it's a human construction in that we create things to create a system in order to solve a problem. Natural organisms haven't come about from anything like that other than to reproduce. And there is a strong argument to say that our sole purpose is to reproduce on those grounds. But apart from that, any other purpose or goal seems to be completely subjective and arbitrary.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that point, but I sort of take the nihilist approach.
Yeah.
So nihilism teaches blah de blah de blah, there's no meaning of life. But nihilism actually teaches a step forward. It goes, there's no meaning of anything, so give it meaning.
I think that's absurdism.
Well, no matter what it's called. I thought you were insulting me then. I thought you were going to say that's absurd.
No. They're very similar doctrines.
But yeah, I don't see the problem with that. I say, if there isn't some objective meaning of our existence, then why not give it one ourselves?
Yeah.
I don't see a problem there.
Yeah, I that's actually the stance I take.
I don't think we need one. We don't need a meaning, but it's definitely useful to have.
Yeah, it's useful to be self-subscribed. I mean, the absurdists, again, I haven't done deep enough reading to speak.
Any research whatsoever?
No, I've done some, more on the playwright side of things. But the purpose of our existence, if it exists, is so convoluted and distant to us. Our pursuit of it is just completely absurd, because we're so restricted by the lives we live, the linguistic tools we've got, the way we perceive purpose in the way I just described earlier in terms of function. It's so distant to us, the pursuit of it is completely absurd, and it's running around in circles, basically, creating circular arguments that have no outside justification. I think that's something I can subscribe to. Whether or not I fall to that or straight up nihilism where there isn't one that we're searching for is up for question. I don't want to think that. That's very, very depressing. But it's definitely still on the table. I'm willing to entertain both.
Yeah, I see where you're getting from. I see where you're getting from. My main point to why I believe that the meaning of life is the pursuit of happiness is specifically because, I mean, I've said it a couple of times, because everything we do because we want.
Yeah.
And I think it's pretty much a cop-out, to be fair.
I just wrote that on my piece of paper.
Oh, wow.
I was going for that next. Please continue.
No, but it is pretty much a cop-out, because when we look at everything we do it because we want to. When we look at everything that an animal does, we look at it because they want to. And I definitely believe that the application, this concept of meaning of life,
Yeah.
that is quite arbitrary, and that is a human invention. It doesn't mean that it isn't right.
I wouldn't say that. I would probably say something along the lines of, it doesn't mean that's not the best available explanation or argument at the moment. It's definitely convincing, and definitely on a, I don't know if I'm using the term right, but on a rhetorical level, it's definitely very appealing. But perhaps it is sort of like we were saying before, the absurdists or the nihilists or whatever, and that it needs to be, if there is no innate purpose, it needs to be self-ascribed. It needs to be derived from yourself, and you achieve that goal. And that's quite appealing in the sense that not so much the end goal is happiness, but the end goal is, or the running goal is, a sense of contentment, in that you think you've done the best thing to the best of your abilities to your own will, because I think we'd definitely agree that living a life against what you want your life to live like is a worse life.
Have you just not been recording this?
It's not playing out of my headphones for some reason.
Oh, it's been just recording now. We'll just keep the bloopers, mate. They're probably.
Is it recording?
Yeah, I think.
Bang! Bang! Okay. Well,
yeah, it is recording.
I'm
Shit.
sorry, lads.
No,
The word was, I've forgotten it already.
Intuition.
Intuitively appealing to you. That to live a life according to your own desires is definitely up there in terms of the best way to live your life. But whether or not there is a fixed way to best do that, to best meet your own will,
I think there is a best way to do that, and that best way is self-improvement.
Self-improvement. So you're not saying happiness anymore.
No, self-improvement, the result
To meet
of
the
self-improvement
goal of being
is to
happy.
be happy.
And you would argue, Tom?
I don't think we can answer the question. I think I search for a really deep meaning in the question, because for me it's a really deep question.
Can we just hold on there, right? So I've got the cop out. It's happiness, guys.
Yeah.
You've got the cop out as we don't know yet, guys, and yours asking us questions.
I'm saying it's inaccessible to us, or it doesn't exist at all.
Right.
It exists, obviously, it's what you've been saying, but it exists in so far as we make it exist.
Unicorns
That's the same as, kind of. I mean, if a unicorn means a lot to you, then it can exist that far. And it's the same with the meaning of life can mean a lot to us, in so much as whatever our subjective meaning of life is. So the meaning of life for you can just be something as simple as family.
Yeah.
And if that's your meaning of life, then fine. But it is as like a philosophical meaning of life. I search for something deeper, and I don't know, that's kind of the way I'm wired.
Well, what does your family bring you?
God damn it.
They bring you happiness.
Well,
Oh.
they don't always, do they? The problem is with the happiness thing. It's kind of. Do you not think then you'd be like a utilitarian view on where just maximising happiness would be the best?
No.
And then,
why not?
Or
Balancing.
what about getting happiness through? Do you have to care about other people's happiness?
No.
So you can get happiness through someone else not achieving that happiness.
I'd argue
giving them
Jack the Ripper
sadness.
may have been a very happy guy.
See that?
And he was living his life he was fulfilling his purpose in.
I never said that the meaning of life
happiness.
purpose is a good thing.
Yeah.
I would personally think that you should bring happiness to other people. But that's because it would also make me happy.
So you have a very sort of self-centered meaning of life, and Tom's got a more holistic, societal.
Not a clue.
No. No, I don't. I
You
don't
came
agree
into
with
this so clear.
No, earlier I was saying I hate this question right from the start. But you brought it up and I thought, oh, at least Will would enjoy this one. So I just kind of ran with
So you could say you were filling your meaning of life to make me happy, to make yourself happy.
Oh.
Thanks, man.
Didn't make me happy though.
Real nice guy.
I didn't achieve any happiness.
You got a
from
big
this.
old smile on your face.
So I'm interested in thinking, if you could take a person and you could take out that little part in their brain that removes any ability to have pleasure at all, would that person be, A, would they be able to have any purpose in their life, and B, would it be better for them to kill themselves to avoid a lifetime of suffering?
I don't think it would be. For the second part, if they are completely unable to feel any sort of pleasure whatsoever, so this is like past a sociopath, psychopath level. This is they can literally not experience happiness.
Yeah, I don't know if we're qualified to say that, but we'll assume.
Then I don't think they have no meaning. I think they have no meaning to themselves, but they can still be useful to other people. For instance, I would not argue that a tree has no meaning in life. I'd argue a tree has the exact same meaning as we do, but that's because we project the meaning onto it.
So you're saying we can like use them as a tool?
Yes.
We can like use psychopaths as tools.
I
to, like,
think-
pack
So
our-
they're-
pack our shopping
I think if
items
something
or
is unable of feeling emotion, then it's merely a tool to human beings.
Oh. So, oh God, should we segue away from this now? It's getting a bit depressing. So something else we wanted to talk about is, Tom is pointing to the piece of paper,
Oh, just in case you needed it.
this idea of your right to life. So again, this is kind of similar, right? Like purpose of life, right to continue living, which is actually links. I should have done a really good segue before with killing the.
Do it again, man.
person.
Do it again.
No.
Raw, unedited. Go
Yeah,
on.
raw and unedited. So, we, as a society, mostly believe that human beings have an inherent right to life. So, in most given circumstances, you are not entitled to take away anybody else's life. You can't. Yeah, that's basically it. Their life is entirely in their own hands, and it's their right to continue living without any sort of what do you call that? Any sort of infringement. However, sometimes in our society we think that well, not necessarily in our society, America specifically, that it is okay to kill certain people, to take away that right from them and end their lives. For example, murderers and rapists and lots of horrible people that we think are evil and really, really bad and therefore should be murdered. Do we think this is justified? And if so, what what is the reason for us taking away that right and then being able to end theirs?
See, I don't actually really have a philosophical viewpoint. I can explain a philosophical viewpoint on this, but my own viewpoint on something such as capital punishment, which I assume you're describing, capital punishment or social justice or whatever, I think it is immoral to take a life, no matter what the situation. It could be the better of two evils. For instance, in an example of self-defense. But I think in no situation is it a neutral or positive act to take a life, including murder. I wouldn't kill Hitler. I would not dream of killing Hitler.
Yeah.
I think it's completely abhorrent.
Unless he made your life less happy.
No. Even then.
Right, yeah.
So that's slightly contradictory then.
Is it?
Well, no, because I don't think it is. I mean, he said earlier on you can make people unhappy in your own goal to happiness.
No, that's what I'm saying. If his continued life was hindering your ability to achieve your maximum happiness, in that terms, you'd be justified to kill him, wouldn't it? Because you've just said you think it's entirely selfish and therefore justified.
In this situation, I don't think he is restricting my. I guess if we assume.
No, I'm saying if he were.
If we assume we have a right to have a meaning of life, and if we assume the meaning of life is the pursuit of happiness, then I would argue he isn't stopping me having this right. Just bringing unhappiness to someone doesn't make them impossible to feel happiness. Even the Jewish population during the Holocaust still had moments of happiness, even if their lives overall were miserable.
Yeah, but they could have ascertained higher happiness
Probably.
by eliminating this person.
So there's a common argument that people are basically born dickheads. they're born bad people. I've spoken to a few friends about this, and
Goddamn babies.
some of the arguments I get back is that people are just born dickheads, and kill them.
I agree with that.
But-
What's your definition of a dickhead?
Bad people.
Bad people. Someone that will murder, or someone that will rape, or anything like
I'd
that.
argue every child starts out with no sympathy and aggression, but I don't think that makes them a bad person.
Let's hear out Tom's argument first.
Go on.
Well, see, I struggle with it because I think although you can maybe be born a murderer, or I think you can be born with links, like neurological links in the brain. So I was pointing out earlier, with a psychopath's frontal cortex is extremely dense. And then that's what means that they can't feel like emotion and stuff like that. And we can actually get indicators to this earlier on in childhood. And I think the same indicators can be pointed to, I don't know where it would be in the brain. So if the psychopath is the frontal cortex, something like a paedophile or a rapist might be linked to a different part in the brain. But we can identify this early on in brain scans. So we can take like children that may be acting out earlier on and say like, your child's acting out, we'll give them a brain scan just to see if anything's wrong. And then
They're a psycho.
This can give us precursors to them possibly developing into a psychopath, and then maybe we can put them into some form of therapy beforehand. The problem is this view isn't too explored yet, and the reason why I don't I'm not a fan of capital punishment is because I think we need to take into account what it is that makes someone a murderer and what it is that makes someone a rapist or whatever, and what can we actually do in the future to prevent these actions from happening. The thing about capital punishment is it's a very satisfying thing, especially for victims and especially for just people that are like observing horrible crimes. It's satisfying to feel like or that justice has been done. But
Revenge.
yeah, but the problem is we're not actually solving the problem. Like there's still murders happening, there's still rapes happening. There must be something, and there must be something we can fix, and that's what I'd like to see. So instead of giving people capital punishment, I think we still have to take them away from society because they're still dangerous, but we need to be able to observe from them, and we need to be able to learn from them what it is that's different with them, whether we can then prevent this in the future and go from there. And just by killing them off, I think we take away that option completely.
So you think that, again, it's not just the right to life that we infringe regularly from people. So their right to freedom of movement, their right to freedom of expression, body sovereignty, all of these things. So you think in these kind of situations, I mean, a rapist probably, I wouldn't know, I hope so, wouldn't want to be any of these things. They wouldn't want to be contained, they wouldn't want to be experimented on, they definitely wouldn't consent. So you think in these kind of situations, is it appropriate to infringe those rights instead? And if so, why?
Well, the thing about I call it experimenting. The thing about it is they need to go along with what you're saying. They need to be they need to be willing to go along, and they need to be willing to have therapy. So I guess you can't. It's kind of an ultimatum situation. I don't know if this is the complete solution, but it's like, right, either way, you need to be taken out of society because you're a danger now. So we can either take you out of society and lock you away in a horrible prison, or we can take you to some sort of specialised place where you're still taken out of society. But the agreement to this is you have to work with us. You have to let us do scans on you. You have to let us try and we have to try and, because you'd like to think that these people don't enjoy the way they are. I mean, I guess some of them might do, but I mean, in the case of like paedophiles and that some of them don't enjoy what they do. Maybe in the case of some psychopaths, like some psychopaths might want to think, I feel emotion, but I'm going off a bit here. I don't know what they are. I'm not thinking. But the point is, we need to experiment on them, and I completely lost my own thought track. Not experiment on them, but work with them. It is experimenting, but it's experimenting with their consent. But we need to work with them and prevent the problem.
So you're giving this as a better alternative rather than locking them up or giving them capital punishment, right?
Yeah.
Do you think this would be the best solution, the final solution?
Oh God!
The final solution.
Okay, let's move away from that. So I mean, again, you've just said it's an ultimatum, so they can choose to cooperate, or they're then forced away from society. But I'm wondering what it is that gives you the entitlement to be able to take that second route and to be able to force them to take away their rights and force them to do something they don't want to do. What is it exactly that is entitling you to do that? Is it a sense of punishment? Is it a sense of forward-looking strategy, and that you're doing that to improve the future? Is it because in their actions they've lost those rights entirely and it's basically fair game?
I think it's a forfeiture of rights in some sense. The problem is, if people are a danger and they're going to be a continued danger, then we need to. It's the forward-looking one as well. We need to be able to stop them from doing any further damage, and then we need to be able to further that and prevent them from doing any more damage, and then we need to be able to further that and prevent other people from committing the same things. I think we have the right to self-defense, and we have the right to protect others, and by taking them out of society we are protecting others, and I think that's where the right comes down to. I mean, you could really be cruel and further that argument and say, if I brain scan someone and see that they have all the underlying conditions for a psychopath, should I then take them out of society because they haven't done anything yet? That's where the real difficulty lies, because I can't actually take him out of society just because his frontal cortex is really dense doesn't mean that he's actually going to turn into a psychopath possibly. So then you really struggle with it. But I mean, I guess in that case it's like, your frontal cortex is really dense, you might turn into a psychopath. Perhaps you should work with us psychologically and we can help prevent this, because I guess you'd also expect there to be some behavioural issues in the first place anyway. But it's kind of a rights forfeiture. Forfeiture.
So it sounds to me like you're sort of putting forward an argument for almost a societal form of self-defense.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah,
then,
I like that.
Then again, with the case you described, can you then do that? Is the fact that they are predisposed to have a higher odds to do that sufficient reason to force these people out of society?
Yeah, I don't think so. But
fucking hell.
Well, it's difficult, isn't it? I because you can't take someone else. They once they've committed the act, then we also have a better basis to say that they're going to commit the act again. I mean, if maybe we could say for certain that someone is going to commit an act of murder beforehand, then can we take them out of society if we know for certain they're going to do it? And I really struggle with that question. I don't know how you two take on it, but I really struggle with it actually. What do you think? Can you take someone out of society if you're 100% sure that they are about to commit an act just based off some sort of scanning?
Some like Minority Report level.
Yeah.
Future crime.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I for one don't believe in punishment. Punishment for the sake of retribution or revenge.
Yeah. Backwards looking.
Yeah, exactly. Backwards looking. So, someone, for instance, capital punishment. What's that actually going to do? That's not going to. You getting rid of the person that isn't solving any problems. It's just stopping them specifically, and it's mostly because people want to see them hang. You know. But when it comes to something like people who may or may not commit a crime, I can't help but think it's firstly very, very difficult to actually evaluate whether or not they will commit the crime.
Yeah.
But if they do, then I genuinely think, yeah, take them out of society or put them into some sort of rehabilitation so they can be introduced back into society. Whether or not they're a psychopath or, you know, a burglar or whatever, whether or not they committed the crime in the first place, if you think they're going to commit a crime again, do it. I mean, the only point in this country, because we don't have capital punishment, I like to think we punish for the sake of reform rather than retribution.
Yeah.
So, you know, if we punish a thief for stealing so he won't do it again. I mean, you can come up with lots of statistics saying it doesn't work,
Yeah.
but that's, I think, our incentive.
So you think we can lock someone up due to their intentions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's quite interesting because there are definitely examples in our society that we do that. Like, police snipers will take out people holding guns to other people even though they may have no actual intention to shoot. They think they 100% will.
Yeah.
I definitely wouldn't want to be in charge of making that call, in that I need to be able to be so convinced that someone is certainly going to commit a crime that they have already preemptively lost their right to life, which is what it would have to be if you were looking at it from a rights-based perspective and not a self-defense perspective. It wouldn't even be yourself, so self-defense may not even come into it. But yeah, it's a spooky idea that we can condemn somebody for doing something they haven't already done yet.
Do you think we should? Do you think we should?
I
do.
I'm conflicted. I mean, in a scenario where it was 100% statistically no chance at all that they weren't going to commit that act, and there were no preventative means other than to take away one of these rights, like incarceration or whatever. Oh, I don't know. If it were,
It's definitely a slippery slope.
it's definitely a slippery slope. If it were a scenario in which someone had to die, I think you would have to kill the preemptive murderer just because they are innocent, but they are less innocent than the innocent person getting murdered. But whether or not that in itself is a morally correct act is not a call that I can make. If
Cop out.
a little bit, I just don't think you can't.
Difficult question, though. Isn't
It's a very difficult question.
You can take a paternalistic?
Yeah.
I'm really struggling with words today. You can take that sort of view in it as well, in so much as, like, you're protecting other people, but you're also protecting the person themselves. So let's say we get early indicators of someone becoming a psychopath, or early indicators for someone having something wrong with their brain. Can we then say, from a paternalistic point of view, that by giving or even forcing them into some sort of therapy, or I don't know, very strongly recommending it, it was then actually beneficial for them as well to develop themselves into a better person, as opposed to them then developing into a person which you'd think they wouldn't want to become. Like, if we the struggle with this is you'd assume it'd happen in children. If we say to children, do you want to be a psychopath when you're older? Some might be like, yeah.
Yes, Daddy.
But you know, we'd like to think that we don't want people to end up that way, and that ourselves, we don't want, like, you don't want to be a psychopath or
Could we utilise them?
Or
Could we utilise psychopaths?
Put them in
For
the
instance,
military.
Yeah, we put them in a high-ranking position in the military,
That
making
definitely
sure
would.
they're supervised. But because you can argue, because they think differently, because they lack these emotions or these sympathies or whatever, then this difference of thought could be useful.
No, I don't think that your paternalism argument would fall into that anymore. I think that ends up as slavery, just regardless of the threat.
Well, I mean, you can still pay them everything. You're just taking away their right to leave.
Yeah, that's
What's the difference
that's
between-
more or less slavery, really.
The difference between that and prison is they're useful. The difference
Oh,
between
dear.
that and, you know, work scientifically experimenting on them, and it's the difference between that.
Well, I mean, I think if you can argue that in certain circumstances taking somebody's rights away is possible, I think the only scenario that I could justify for that is because they're going to infringe on the rights of other people. I definitely don't think that you could take somebody else's right away in order to use them as a means to an end.
Yeah, with the intention to exploit them.
Yeah, that's certainly not a moral act, I think.
So, surely morally we should never ever experiment on them.
While they're alive and while they're unwilling, I would agree
yeah.
with that.
If they're unwilling, which is where, and the problem is, I don't think going through some sort of like psychotherapy work will really work very well if they're not actually willing. So I think there definitely has to be a willingness for it to actually work and for it to actually be beneficial.
I think some of them would be willing to work in the military.
Possibly.
I reckon some already do.
Is that because they lack emotion and lack fear and stuff like that?
Yeah, mate.
Yeah, I was just thinking about what I said. Because I mean, I kind of get it. If they lack emotion and they lack fear, and then they want to go into the military, it's like, yeah, fine. Or there's the other side of the view where they lack emotion, they lack fear. They should be experiencing these things. Therefore, we should help them to like have emotion and have fear before they can make the decisions. But I mean, who are we to say what this specific entity or person wants?
Just to pause for a sec.
To actually pause?
No.
Okay.
We specifically aren't accusing the military of being like psychopaths who just go around killing. They do help a lot of people.
Yeah, not too much
Because
anyway.
I know we do have some fans of the show who are in the military. We aren't accusing the military of just killing people. They do lots of things.
Or of all being psychopaths.
Yeah,
Just a
definitely
few.
not. Definitely not. Carry on.
I've lost my train. So we were talking about people on death row, when what it is that gives us our entitlement to imprison them and then kill them, and then we reached.
Do you think we can kill them?
I don't think we can kill them.
Right.
Why not?
It's a very, very scary one. I think I don't. On the surface, I'm inclined to think this just because I'm very scared of having a governing body that has the ability to take its constituents' lives.
Big word.
Big word. But I think the only scenario in which you could argue to take somebody's life is if they were directly a threat to your life. Or, yeah, even to your life. It's harder to argue a threat to somebody else's life, but for your life, one for one, your obligation is on you.
But do you think that's a good thing or morally permissible? Do you think it's the lesser of two evils?
What, to kill somebody in self-defense?
Yeah. The lesser of two evils or good?
Let's come back to that.
That's cool.
Because I don't want to go on a tangent.
That's cool.
As for people in prison, I think it's a lesser. If they continue to be a threat to society, then it's reasonable to take away their right to freedom of movement, because it's a lesser trade-off. I feel that having other people's lives stacked against somebody's freedom, it's not a great solution, but it's acceptable. I don't agree that they should be in prison for defined sets of time as a sense of punishment, because that's what it is. You say you're going to be in prison for 100 years. I don't know. I think the prison system's all wrong in that, ours anyway, in that.
Well, do you not think in that situation it would be a deterrent and that'd be useful for further crimes?
A deterrent?
It'd be deterrent, so it would stop other people from burgling in the first place.
In the case of murders, and potentially in this, maybe less so in the sense of burglary, but I don't think a murderer is going to be particularly off-put in knowing that they're going to be killed. If a murderer wants to kill somebody, if a rapist is going to rape somebody, I don't think that's. In most cases, this is not covering everything. That's not the reason, because they do it. They murder people all the time in America, and they're being killed in prison. They've got massive amounts of murder and gun crime.
Yeah, they kill more people.
As a deterrent, it's clearly not working.
Well, you could argue that's a society rather than a deterrent. The deterrent could be working. We can't possibly evaluate.
So
that.
you take away the death penalty, and then you think that their murder numbers could quadruple.
I think the numbers, would rise.
But to go back to my previous point, the way our prisons are organised, they definitely do feel like it's backward looking, it's punishment. You've done this, you're a bad person, you need to receive this
And you
punishment.
disagree with that?
I 100% disagree with
Give me
that.
a little high five.
Little high five there. That's audible as well. That's a high five for you as well.
I MSR this shit.
backwards looking is a completely pointless way of dealing with your criminals. It's like you.
It's cruelty. That's what I say.
It's cruelty, and I'm reiterating your point, but it does not solve anything
It's 'cause I'm right.
at all. The only way you could justify imprisoning people is a forward-looking argument that aims a prison system that aims to rehabilitate people and allow them to cease to be a risk to the rest of society and then regain those rights. In fact, I don't think they ever lose those rights. It's just they're such a significant risk to society that their risk of infringing on other people's rights is so great that it justifies your short-term suspending of their rights in order to help them progress away and
So
to minimise
you're arguing it's protection and reform.
protection from the outside and reform for the individual. Yeah, it's like the way you deal with the criminally insane. So they actually, I'm not sure if they do get a
I don't know anything
time.
about this, so
But
you
they
can fuck up on yourself.
They get put in. I watched the Louis Theroux documentary.
Oh,
yeah.
I know, that is the utmost research. But these people, they get put in these facilities, they get therapy, they get care, and once they're ready, once they're deemed safe or safe enough, they are reintroduced into society step by step. And I don't see why we shouldn't be treating all of our criminals like that. Otherwise, it just seems like a pointless, spiteful act to say, you've had a lifetime that's led up to you committing a bad act, and therefore you have to continue to pay for that.
Yeah,
It doesn't seem
spite. Yeah.
Problem is, we can't reform without a deeper understanding of what it is that's going on in their brain and why they're acting out, and then why other people will then choose to act out.
Back to the final solution.
Yeah. the only way we can help people reform is to better understand the condition in the first place. So part of the reforming procedure should also be a procedure where we have them sit down and where we have them go through, like, talking to psychologists where they're going to get probed about what happened in their life, what could have possibly caused it, and have them go through things like neurological brain scans.
Yeah.
And it has to be voluntary, but there has to be something like that, because if our system of reformation,
Yeah.
reformation,
Or the desired system of reformation.
yeah, if our
That's
system
not
of
what we have.
reformation isn't actually going to reform people because we're looking at it the wrong way, then we're not going to get any results from it whatsoever. So we need to deepen our understanding, and we need to work with these people that work with us. And the only way we can get these people to work with us is by changing the societal view on bad people. People need to stop thinking, it's such a horrible person, kill them, throw them in jail for the rest of their life, don't let them see the light of day.
Yeah.
And I think the same stands for pedos.
We wanted to link that in somehow, so that was Tom's smooth saying.
Could you not be more formal about it?
We had a discussion the other day, didn't we? We got a philosophy group chat, and it was just about how much can we blame paedophiles, and it's the same extent with if, for example, a psychopath is inevitably going to be a psychopath. Is a paedophile inevitably going to be a paedophile?
Yeah, as a result of their biology.
Yeah, well, there's two ideas. One idea, it's a sexual preference, such as being homosexual.
Yeah, in which case it boils down to your biology, because I think it's widely accepted now, or it's becoming to be widely accepted, that things like homosexuality, or at least a tendency to move towards homosexuality.
We know what the gay gene is.
Yeah, it can be pointed to in your genetic code.
But the other argument is it not psychological? Did not experience psychological trauma? And again, we've noticed this. Maybe not noticed. Maybe that's the wrong word. But there are. Don't know how to describe this without sounding like an idiot. There are a lot of people who belong to the LGBT community who have experienced sexual trauma early on in life. And I mean, I'm not the one who's. This has been told by medicals, right? But apparently there's some sort of correlation. There's some sort of graph. So, you could argue it's both genetic and environmental, or if it's just environmental.
Yeah.
But their argument was basically it was environmental. They're sick. Was their argument.
These are corrupted people.
Yeah.
Yes.
In fact, at one point in the conversation, I went, well, do you not think they need treatment then? Do you not think they need psychological treatment? And one person would be like, no, they're sick. Well, purely by definition, your own insult would suggest, yeah, they do.
So again, that's symptomatic of just the way we treat a lot of our
It's
criminals.
just bigoted. It's bigoted.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
It's how again, like linking it back slightly to the way we treat our criminals in prison. Once you've committed this act,
We just don't see you as human anymore.
we dehumanise, and that allows us to take away their human
it
rights.
excuses us to what we want with them.
Potentially indefinitely in the case of murderers, and as a lot of people I've heard this said before, they'd love to say they'd love to kill paedophiles.
Yeah, lots of people want to lynch pedos.
Yeah, burn them at the stake. But if it's a very difficult one, because if you can prove that people are genetically disposed to, or at least their odds are increased of having sexual attraction to children as a result of their biology, it's very hard to. I've lost my train.
So
Nice job.
I nearly sounded really
it
intelligent.
depends what it comes down to. It depends where it comes down to their biology. Actually, I don't think it does. Whether it is their biology or whether it's through some sort of trauma at a young age, there is probably there's factors that lead to like the way they're sexually orientated. And the problem is when we have this view, and it's a fair view. Don't get me wrong. It's a fair view to want to lynch them. There's fair reason to want to hate these people for what they do, because disgusting acts brings this out in us. It's
preying on people who can't defend themselves.
Exactly. It's a natural response, but it comes back to what I was saying earlier. In the goal needs to be to reduce the amount this happens, not just to punish them for what they're doing wrong.
Yeah, precisely.
So one distinction that was made in the conversation was the difference between active and non-active paedophiles. So a non-active paedophile will be someone who likes little kids or likes people under the age of consent.
Yeah, they have the sexual desire pointed at children.
Yeah, and an active one is a person who works on this, who does something based on
actively
this.
molests people.
Well, not just molests, it can be online and stuff.
Okay,
We have lots
I'll
of
take
laws
that.
against that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So what do you think? So we agree that, I assume we agree that we should be non-active anyway, should be put into therapy of some kind.
See, now this is a point we struggled for. To revert slightly, we all more or less agree that active paedophiles should be treated in the same way that active murderers or active rapists get attacked. They need to be taken from society and rehabilitated because they are a significant threat to other people's right.
Not revenge, but pity.
Yeah. Well, okay.
Yeah.
I'll take that.
Pity isn't a bad thing.
Yeah. But in the case of a non-active paedophile, you'd have to revert down to paternalistic arguments, which I'm not particularly happy with, in the sense that you want to argue, Will, in that a non-active paedophile, if we know of them, they should be made to undergo rigorous therapy, and am I correct in saying that they should be compelled to do that?
Then no. I think a non-active paedophile, they definitely need to be encouraged to seek out therapy and seek out help.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, again, if it's genetic or if it's environmental. So I don't know if it's to stop these urges or to teach them to control these urges. I don't know which one would be true, but I do think that people feeling these urges in the first place should definitely seek therapy.
Yeah.
And the problem with our society is we have a high stigma. Basically, we want to kill pedos. So if you're a pedo, it's a lot less likely that you're going to seek help.
Yeah. No, that's the argument I was putting forward in the chat. In that society, anyway, we need to destigmatise the whole thing for a start, because I don't think we should be dehumanising any group of people, no matter how evil they are.
Just to excuse our behaviour to them.
Just to excuse our behaviour, and secondly, we need to create a bigger divide between active and non-active, because in condemning the active, potentially rightly so, we also prevent non-active people feeling able to put themselves out in the open and actually actively seek help, which, while some people might argue that's a good thing, that to me seems a very dangerous course of action.
Just a bigoted view that's going to lead to more problems than solutions.
Yeah, precisely.
There is like an argument against this, in that the problem is how much rehabilitation do we have to do Well, I mean, what if the rehabilitation doesn't work for 100 years, and we keep taking people in, attempting to rehabilitate them, and they go back out, and then they recommit the crime? Whereas, obviously, the other option is jail them forever, or have them, or capital punishment.
Yeah.
In so much as we're not going to, I mean, but they will commit the acts again if we rehabilitate them. Well, they might do, and if we by by killing them, we take away the possibility of doing that act. Like, it's fair enough that we're saying, rehabilitation's good and it might solve the problem, but it is kind of a might solve the problem. And by rehabilitating people, there's a chance that we're putting more kids and more people in danger.
Yeah.
I think it's the best solution, though.
I think it does have to boil down to an odds game at the end of the day. You need to minimise, because ultimately I do think, I think at some point the moral permissibility starts to run dry. Like, you can keep them contained for as long as they are a reasonable threat, and as that threat decreases, your justification for keeping them contained gets lesser and lesser, and eventually it has to outweigh each other. You can't wait for somebody to hit 0% because 0% chance of reoffending, because nobody on the outside has 0% chance of reoffending. You just need to get that as close to the average human being inclination to rape or to murder or to rob or whatever. And at that point, I don't think you are justified to keep them in there, even if they have got a tendency to do so.
What if we discover that rehabilitation isn't possible, and that they are definitely going to recommit the acts? Maybe rehabilitation isn't possible, but maybe it's possible to identify it early on and stop it from forming.
Yeah.
So far as rehabilitation might not be possible. Once this thing is manifested and really taken hold in the brain, it could be then not possible to rehabilitate.
So this is back to studying them and learning from them, so we can avoid the problem in the future.
But if it's completely inaccessible, I don't know, maybe it would have to be a course of action that restricts their rights as much as possible, but prevents them from being a risk to other people. You could stick them in the experience machine and let them rape everybody they want to, or that's actually a good shout. We should make experience machines for criminals, man.
To be fair, that's actually a really good shout. Like a criminal, just they can get all their problems.
They
and
maintain
things
their
out there.
freedom to an extent, and they cease to be a risk to society.
Although, I imagine some commit crimes for the thrill of it. So is there a thrill of it?
Well, they wouldn't know they're in the thought machine.
But yes, you can't leave them in there. That would be restricting rights.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. Is your right to the freedom of movement the right to freedom of movement?
Freedom of reality.
Is it the right to freedom of movement, or the right to feel like you have freedom of movement? Because those are two very, very different things. We aren't free to move in a lot of places. And yet we feel as though we have it. And
I believe it's an international law that you're not allowed to brainwash people. So I'd assume it's the freedom, not the thinking you have freedom.
Yeah. But I mean, in the kind of situation where they can't be changed, and in your society...
I think seclude them, give them their own society.
Yeah, well, that's risky as well, because that society's going to be fucking awful. You don't want to put them there.
No, I don't. Honestly, I don't think so. I think if you put a bunch of pedos together, a bunch of rapists together, a bunch of murderers together, a bunch of robbers together, whatever, for whatever reason, I don't think the society would be bad, because they'd go, right, we're in this situation, we have nowhere to go, we can't leave. You have to make the best of it. In that situation, you have to try and be as happy as possible. And it gets to the point where you come to this social contract. Well, guys, let's not rob from each other. Because it's not going to get us anywhere.
Yeah, well, I feel that's very wishful thinking, but I definitely agree that they should be removed from our society in a way that they can't reoffend. So whether it was that, put them in the thought tank, put them...
So not necessarily restricting their freedom, just taking them out of society.
Yeah,
do you think they have a right to society?
No. Society is a contract between each of its members, and if you fail to fulfill that contract, you are no longer entitled to be in that society. It's why we pay tax.
Yeah, I completely agree. Okay.
Should we finish on that?
Let's finish on that. And on that bombshell, again, we apologise for this one being a little bit staggered. It's quite late in the evening, and we were just dying to get this churned out.
Had a few pints as well.
And we have had a few pints, so that has not helped. But
that helps you guys. It's made me more focused.
Wow. So yeah, forgive, forget. Let's move on. I've been Matthew.
I've been Thomas.
I've been Will. Thank you for listening. Feel free to subscribe, leave a like and share the video. Thanks very much.